I think that The Savages is one of the more underrated stories from Doctor Who's missing episodes, but now with an animation to be released in March 2025, it's time for a reappraisal. Today, I want to discuss the new animation, some moments to look forward to from the story, my initial thoughts on how it looks based on the trailer, and then we'll take a look forward into the future of Doctor Who's animation range. The Savages is a 4-part William Hartnell adventure during the very end of his era playing the first Doctor. All 4 episodes are missing from the BBC's archive, but it is now going to be animated in colour and in black and white. The Doctor, Stephen and Dodo land on a planet that is divided by class, the Elders and the Savages. The Elders in their luxurious city are capturing the Savages and draining them of their life force. The Doctor and his friends must stop them before they become victims themselves. Although special features have been confirmed for the release, details of them have not been announced yet. But a behind-the-scenes photo of a model TARDIS being filmed has been released. For this release, there are going to be 3 discs, which is unusual because usually they do that for 6-part stories. But for 4 parts, they can usually fit it onto 1 or 2 discs, so it could be interesting. Maybe there's a lot more extras, who knows? This story is one of my favourite missing serials from Doctor Who's history. It's one that always surprised me when watching the Telesnap reconstruction by Loose Cannon. It doesn't really have a big draw because it doesn't have like a monster or anything, and I don't think people really gave it much attention because of that. Similar to how The Enemy of the World wasn't given its flowers before it was returned to the archive. Hartnell gives a varied performance throughout the story, being processed through the life force machine. From the telesnaps, you can see how withered he becomes by this experience. Some fans have theorized that this story is one of the factors that contributed to his eventual regeneration. Speaking of departures, this is also Stephen's final regular appearance in the show. I love the Doctor and Stephen's bickering, and I like that they both stand up for what they believe in, and they're happy to argue about it and get into really big disagreements. It's a dynamic I enjoy in any TARDIS team. Although Stephen's departure is a little bit odd, but all departures during this era are a little bit odd, it's still a great story regardless. The atmosphere throughout the story is really great as well, and I love the weird corridor set design. I loved the story so much that it was actually one of my earliest fan projects where I animated the telesnaps for the first episode. It's very rough for what I could achieve now, but I was quite proud of it back then. But enough of the past, let's look to the present. My first thought when seeing the early images was, oh great, it's the Underwater Menace team again. And I felt that way because I was quite disappointed by the Underwater Menace animation. My main critiques were about the colour palette of the characters and the lack of lighting and shadows. This is still an issue I have with the current animation, but there has been some improvements. I think Stephen and Dodo's character designs are really good. Dodo's face design is incredibly good, even if her costume is a bit on the colour palette of Big Bird. I understand wanting to put more colour in, but I think this is a little bit too extreme for my taste. Vicky on Twitter made me laugh comparing Stephen to handsome Squidward. The Doctor's new design is a bit hit and miss for me. I think the hair is an improvement, but that awful tie from Galaxy 4 has made a return. His tie just doesn't look like that at all. The collar is an improvement though. The 2D background art has returned again, which is fine. I don't mind 2D background art. I love it in Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? It's so gorgeously detailed and spooky. And I see a lot of people comparing this to Scooby-Doo, which I don't necessarily agree with. There's a lot more shadows in Where Are You? But I feel like in this animation, it feels a lot flatter. I like that the exterior seems to be inspired by the original set designs, just expanded. The interiors also seem to be inspired by the original production, just given an extra modern polish. I think that the new updated chamber where the Doctor is lying down is an improvement on the original glass chamber. But I do wonder how it'll line up with the original audio, like all the sound effects, would it match up? If they put in new sound effects, would it work better? But that's a problem for future us, and we'll see how that goes. I'm so happy that they kept the design of the hallways, which I've always loved. That zigzag effect is just really great. The small glimpses of the city looks like it's been expanded on massively, which I'm all for as well. One thing I have a real issue with is the inconsistent line work. I find it really distracting. Some lines are thick and black, and others are thin and use color instead. And the background art has no detailed lines. And I think it just makes the black lines really stand out. I don't think there's anything wrong with this approach. I'm sure many animations do this. It's just not my personal preference. It seems like they've tried a lot harder with the lighting of the characters this time, which I really admire. The backlighting on the characters on the interiors just makes it feel so much more tied together. The character animation feels a lot smoother than the Underwater Menace also. The scene where one of the savages walks down the corridor menacingly looks a lot smoother. I wonder if they'll recreate one of my favourite telesnaps. It's so menacing, just standing at the end of the corridor in silhouette. In the short clip of that scene that they show in the trailer, they've made a real emphasis on shadows, so I think they've taken on the critique of the lighting and they've tried to improve it. Yet there's scenes further on in the trailer which are set in the caves, and it's just so bright. It should be dark, and the fire on the wall should be the only source of illumination. It just lacks so much atmosphere, and I don't know why they're so afraid of adding that in. It adds so much more production value. Anyone who has a Photoshop account knows that just chucking a texture on top will solve all of your problems. Although I've listed a lot of critiques here, just know that it comes from a place of love, and I'm actually really excited about this animation. I think it's going to be a big improvement on the Underwater Menace, and it's such a brilliant story. I have faith that the animation team will do it justice, and judging by the announcement trailer, they've shown that they've definitely grown. So in summary, I think the character artwork is probably at the same level, but with just better lighting. I think the character animation feels smoother. I think the shadows and the backlighting have been improved. And I think they've learnt their lesson from their previous animation, and now we're probably going to head into a lot more solid releases from this team. Because look, we were all pretty harsh on the Reign of Terror animation because it was a bit rough around the edges. But as the 10th Planet came out and the Moon Base, they just got better and better. And I hope that this team also gets better and better because everyone benefits and it's great. So let's talk about the future of Doctor Who animations. In my previous video, I interviewed Iz Skinner on her incredible 3D animation of The Wheel in Space, and how during a meeting with the BBC, they said that fans don't want 3D, perhaps influenced by the mixed reception to the Web of Fears animation style. So, from now on, it looks like 2D is the future for these animations. After The Savages has been released, only 10 stories are left to be animated, which is a crazy thought. And to me, with Iz Skinner's Wheel in Space and David Bush's Mission to the Unknown, I would even count those two as already animated. And with Andrew Ireland's U-Clan Mission to the Unknown recreation as another option, I think Mission to the Unknown is fully covered for me. The big heavy hitters left are probably Marco Polo and the Daleks' Master Plan, which I think most people consider massive classics. Marco Polo being a 7-part historical set during season 1's emphasis on character development, and the Daleks' Master Plan being a 12-part Dalek epic told across a massive universe. A lot of people love The Massacre, which I think would be an incredibly interesting one to see, because it's just so dark. The Mythmakers would also be a great one for animation, essentially a goofy comedy for the first 3 episodes and then descending into a bloodbath in its finale. The Crusade, The Smugglers, The Highlanders are 3 historical stories, none of which I massively love, but would be interesting to see them come to life again. I think I find it harder to watch historicals when they're telesnap reconstructions, and we haven't had a purely historical story animated since the Reign of Terror, and that was quite a while ago now. And finally, we have The Space Pirates, a story that is always at the bottom of episode rankings, but I think is dying for a more reimagined animation. The Celestial Toymaker was not a favourite story of mine, but the new 3D animation was such a radical departure that I actually enjoyed it a lot more. I do feel sorry for people who love the original production and the original production design of The Celestial and Toymaker because it was such a different interpretation. Ultimately, the future of missing episode animations is exciting. So many stories, some better than others, but they all have their own merits and exciting moments. I'm happy that Steven's departure story is now being animated, and that those who struggle with the telesnaps or just listening to the audio can now have a chance to enjoy it. I think I'm going to find it difficult watching this animation and just enjoy it because I've watched the recon so many times. And I've even animated it myself multiple times. I know the telesnaps so well, and I think it'll take a little while to disconnect that side of my brain and just enjoy the new animation for what it is, rather than what it isn't. So, what do you think? Are you looking forward to this animation, or is it the end of the world? Let me know in the comment section below. Okay. Again, what is wrong with you? You freak. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Josh Nez YouTube channel.